Hello again, here I am, back on the highway. The other day we were talking about poetry and I want to get back to that. And I'm going to talk about bad poetry. Not that I think it's bad, but that it doesn't get much credit. I talked about that a little bit. Talked about how the first poems we learn are nursery rhymes. And then when we start to learn, I left out the discussion of Dr. Seuss. Everything he does rhymes. It does tend to make anything that sounds like Dr. Seuss lose some of its credibility. This wasn't always the case. That's another problem, of course. Traditional poetry, old poetry, poetry from previous generations. It's not modern, it's not up to date, it's not hip. But I remember it fondly, the poems that my dad loved. Things like Casey at the Bat, which is the only one that somehow still manages to make it into a lot of textbooks somehow. But my father's favorite by far was Robert Service, most famous for the cremation of Sam McGee, shooting of Dan McGrew, a few others. The Men That Don't Fit In is very good. And I could have done one of those, but there's a lot of cremation of Sam McGee's on YouTube already. If you know the poem, you might want to check those out, and if you don't, you definitely should check those out. Then I came across the idea in the wake of John Green talking about how he was misattributed as the author of a quote. And one of my favorite Robert Service poems growing up, turns out, was not written by Robert Service at all. And that is The Face on the Barroom Floor, originally written by John Henry Titus. Later version was done by Hugh Antoine Darcy, I think was his name. I'll check on that. But it does carry very much the sound and rhythms. It's a ballad similar to the writings of Robert Service. Wow, look at that, movie magic. It's now 10 hours later and I'm not on my way to work, I'm on my way home. The light just got too bad and I couldn't deal with it anymore. I decided I would try it on the way home. The light is much better, we got some cloud cover. Getting back to what I was saying about the poem by John Henry Titus, it had a very similar sound to Service's best poems, but more importantly, it told a similar narrative. And that's where I have to come up with a confessional disclaimer here and admit that I am a sucker for sentiment. Yes, that's true. I love a good sappy, syrupy, corny, ridiculous story. Old country and western songs of the worst variety can cut right to my heart, whether it's the classically bad Bobby Goldsboro Honey to Tim McGraw's Don't Take the Girl, Elvis Presley's Don't Cry Daddy. These are all wonderful, and you don't want to be with me in the car if Clarence Carter's Patches comes on the radio, because I will just be in seventh heaven. It's one of my very favorite songs. These things are maudlin and terribly sentimental, and sometimes I just wonder, what's wrong with that? Are we that afraid of feeling, or is it that it's too contrived? I don't know, but they work for me frequently. And I recognize they're not great art, but sometimes apparently I don't need great art. I just want a good story. I appreciate tales of heartbreak and loss and yearning, and The Face on the Barroom Floor is one of those. It fits right in with that pattern. So I hope that you will like it if you've never heard it. I hope that it'll come back again if you detest it, because I will try to look at more serious poems, if you want to call them that, in the future. But today I want to look at The Face on the Barroom Floor, not by Robert Service, but by John Henry Titus. Thanks. And until next time, don't forget to be awesome, and I will talk to you again soon, hopefully. It does tend to make anything that sounds like Dr. Goose, Dr. Goose?